What's up, y'all? It's Jalen back at it again with another video. And in today's video, what we're going to be talking about is being, existence, and essence, right? And a lot of these words, if anybody's familiar with the relations that these words have with each other, what we're going to be talking about, honestly, is existentialism. We're just going to have a take on it and see where it takes us. And the take that I'm going to be talking about is the classic maxim in existentialism, which is that existence precedes essence. Now, what does that mean? That means that our active form of being precedes our passive form of being. So what we participate in, what values we hold, and the attitudes that we prescribe to things precedes just our our composition. It precedes our anatomy, just our passive form of being that doesn't really require any affirmation, that just is. For existentialists, being is very much active. Whether you read Camus, you have to rebel. Whether you read Nietzsche, you have to fight against the Dionysian within the world. So there's always this active going out in existentialism that this form of action is preferred over just sitting and prescribing your being to just your passive form of identity that doesn't really require any action whatsoever. But I was thinking, and I was like, does existence have to precede essence? Does essence necessarily have to be a bad thing? Is there something more to essence that we're not looking at? And when I say this, I think about God's design of man. Okay, so what is God's design of man, right? When God made Adam, he did two things. First off, he made Adam in his image. Now, what does that mean? An image would be essence. An image isn't necessarily, it's not very active, right? It's just, it's just an image. It's just conveying something. It's not, a participation when you really consider its activity. So that would be essence. And then you have existence. Now, what is the existence part of the design of man? The existence part would be God breathing life into Adam. Now, when God breathes life into Adam, he gives a part of himself to Adam. He gives a part of his functionalities. He gives a part of his internal reality to Adam. So now Adam can do similar things that God can. Adam looks like God, and not only does Adam look like God, but Adam also has internal functionings that are similar to God, and these internal functionings can allow for him to act and participate in the world around him, which that is what existence is. So for an existentialist, of course, breath is more important than image. What you look like doesn't necessarily matter until you act in a way that defines anything. Like how you act defines who you are versus what you look like defining who you are. Now, let's really think about this in a sense, and let's really give some. Let's give, how can you say it, some substance, some positive substance to defend essence. Is essence really a bad thing? Because when we really look at essence, essence can be seen as a matrix of who we are, right? I am an African American. That's one essence of who I am. I am a man. That's another essence. Predispositions, that's essence, right? So I'm predisposed to, I like to learn about stuff. I've always liked learning about things. I'm predisposed to occult knowledge. I'm predisposed to sharing ideas with other people. There's a lot of predispositions that I have that make up the essence of who I am. Of course, you also have the existence part of it. You can argue that sharing ideas is more of an active form of being versus a passive form of being. But I've always done this, so I feel like it's more of an essence versus an affirmation versus existence. Existence for me would be more so along the lines of maybe I guess you can say the existentialist attitudes that I've adopted. That could be a form of active being, a form of existence. So, but these things, when you look at the essence versus the existence, both of them really feed into each other. My experiences as a man, as a black man, as a man that is human and that goes throughout life aging, whether it be transitory or not, as an aging consciousness, all of these things that I just come into being with, and that I cannot really rebel against, and that are passive and that are just there. They give credence to how I choose to participate in life. They give credence to how I choose to exist, and vice versa. How I choose to exist will be colored by my essence, right? Two people doing the exact same thing is not going to come out the same way, depending on the essence of who they are, right? I think we can see that with politics. I mean, politics is very easy. I mean, if you have two candidates saying the exact same thing, we're not going to hear it the same way due to the essence of that person, right? A Republican could be saying the exact same thing as a Democrat. We're going to be thinking that one's pushing Republican ideology and another is pushing Democrat ideology, just due to the essence of who they are, regardless of how they choose to exist in that moment. So one feeds into the other, regardless of if we think that one should proceed or one opposes or anything like that. How I really feel about this is that how we really should be viewing the existentialist attitude is we should just really view it as pure being. Active being, like I said, active being, which is existence, and passive being, which is essence. I don't think that existence precedes essence, and I don't really think that essence precedes existence. And thinking about Genesis gave me credence to that idea, right? And the reason why Genesis gave me credence to that idea is because it all came into one, right? The image, the essence, and the existence came into one. The appearance of man came into being, and the functioning and the life of man came into being. It all came as one, right? And the torture came later, because as a being that is existence and as a being that is essence, you wish to know more about yourself. Because even though you have existence and even though you have essence, the thing that separates man from non-conscious things in existence is consciousness. Consciousness makes it to where you wish to know more about your essence, about why you wish to know more about the matrix of who you are, which is really your essence, is your collective essence. Your collective essence is your sort of external matrix. You wish to know more about that, but you also wish to know more about existence and why you were called to make certain actions. What makes you have certain values and certain meanings, and participate in life in a particular sort of way. So consciousness is what separates man from other things, and it's also what makes it to where man is tormented. why man is tormented, compared to other things. A rock doesn't really have to suffer, but a man does have to suffer, because a man always questions his plights and his conditions and his situations. And it's never just a purely this. There's always something else when it comes to particular life situations and particular emotions. It can never purely be one thing. At the end of the day, Eve ate from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and with good and evil, there's always skepticism, because is what I'm doing good, or is what I'm doing evil? We ate from that tree, but we also had the tree of life within the garden. What could have happened if we ate from the tree of life instead of the tree of good and evil? Because the tree of life is just concerned with one thing, and that is, how do we continue on with life? It doesn't necessarily care about skepticism and all of this. All it cares about is the truth of our existence, and yes, yes, eating from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil gave us a consciousness that was like God, but maybe eating from the tree of life could have given us a consciousness to where we could have seen things through the lens of God, and we could have experienced the life as God, right? And of course, with Kabbalah mysticism, that's really the whole point of it. So really, to just conclude this, so I don't really go off the deep end, I think the existentialist attitude should shift, and I think it should shift not only due to the individual, but also due to just a global lens at the world, and the global lens of the world is the fact that how we come into the world affects our existence. Yes, and also not only the essence that we come into the world with, but how we act also affects the world. We need to consider both of these things. We need to consider both of these things as merely just spectrums of being, and not as preceding the other. We need to see both of these things as valid. We need to see them as coloring each other, and we need to not give credence of one above the other, of threat of missing out on one or the other. So, just to end on a statement of what I'm saying, all I'm saying is that existence and essence are characteristics of being, and one does not precede the other. But that's it, guys. Peace out.